All right, you ready to kick it off with Julia's question?
Let's do it.
She says, I'm 33. She says, I'm 33 years old and I have over $1 million in debt. And I'm feeling overwhelmed, understandably, Julia. I'm a doctor, so I have about $200,000 of student loans at 6%, with an $800,000 mortgage at 7.5%, and $3,000 left in credit card debt.
Hey, clarification, $800,000 mortgage with what interest rate?
7.5%. She goes on to say, my mortgage payment is right at 25% of our gross income, and our combined household income is around $270,000.
Good.
Besides the mortgage, we've kept our spending down drastically. So I know we can tackle this quickly, but I am just not sure where to start. Any advice?
Well, one, Jill, you got a bunch of big numbers here, right? I mean, obviously, you were young. You're dealing in the realm and the world of big numbers, right? When I hear $200,000 in student loan debt, I hear $800,000 in mortgage debt, I hear $270,000 of income. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot going on. Brian, I would like to start this off, if you're okay with that. She's trying to figure out, how do I tackle this? Number one, very first thing that I can't say number one. I got to go back to the beginning. We got to start the financial order of operations because
that's why I already had it ready.
Can't be number one. You got to go to the financial order of operations because she said one thing in there that I heard that was just super annoying. She said that she's got $3,000 of credit card debt, and that one I was like, one of these is not like the others when I heard everything else. But I can't say that's the first thing that she should do. Yeah. That should be the third thing that she should do. So I would make sure, Julia, number one, do you have your deductibles covered? Number two, is there an employer match for you and your spouse at your employers, and are you taking advantage of that? Number three, I would then knock out that credit card debt. No reason to have $3,000 of credit card debt in your financial situation.
And the name on this was Julia. So Julia, the thing, I didn't hear anything about emergency reserves. Was there any data on emergency reserves? No.
There was no data on emergency reserves.
She's probably starting out.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it is starting out.
It sounds like she was early in the journey.
Obviously, I'm just thinking once again in terms of financial order of operations. We've got through, take out the $3,000 of credit card debt. That's a no-brainer. Nobody should be carrying that type of debt. Number four, emergency reserves. Now, here's what's wild for Julia is that she's got such a high income. Even at 3 months, that's going to be a chunk of, that's going to be a lot. I mean, if you did, let's see, if we got $270,000 divided by 12 times 3. I mean, she's going to want to have close to probably $60,000, $70,000. Now, the only thing, I don't know what her living expenses are.
She did say that they've been living pretty low. So maybe she could trim, if their expenses really are as low, once she factors in mortgage, once she factors in that, maybe it could be a little bit less than that.
I'd like it to be at least, it's at this level of income and everything you just told me you're carrying, probably at least $40,000 to $50,000 at a minimum, and that's better. Make sure that that's at least 3 to 6 months, hopefully closer to 6 months of living expenses. Now, you make way too much money to do traditional Roth, but I do want to encourage you, check out if you can do a Roth conversion strategy.
A little backdoor Roth
for you and your spouse. There's potential there that if you don't have any other retirement assets and the only thing you have is your employer plan, then you could, even with your high income, qualify for a Roth conversion strategy. So that's, if you're $6,500 a piece, that's going to be close to $13,000. And then we get into step 6, which is max out retirement. Now, for most people who are 33 years of age, I mean, it is a big goal. I don't even think you probably get to $22,500 before you graduate to step 7 of the financial order of operations. Because remember, your goal is to get 25% of your income in savings and investments. Well, your income is so high that actually I think you're going to need to fill up your 401k as well as make sure your spouse has their 401k, because you're looking at this as a household. You do want to make sure you take advantage of the two $22,500 qualified retirement plans. So that's right around $45,000. Now, Bo, when we get into step 7, hyperaccumulation, this is when I want to push the ball back over to you, because we need to start talking about, okay, what does 25% of $270,000 look like? We got housing as 25%. I got to think taxes are probably another 25%.
Yeah, for sure.
How do we go through step 7, with taxable brokerage, steps 8, and then how do we finally tackle that debt?
Yeah, and so I think where we're at is $270,000 of gross income. If you're going to be saving 25%, I think that comes out to like $67,500. I was doing some math while he was crunching. So then you max out both of your back doors. You got $6,500. You max out both of your 401ks, $22,500. That leaves around $10,000 that you got to find something to do with before you hit the 25%. Well, you know that we love opening up just a regular taxable after-tax brokerage account. It's part of the 3-bucket strategy where not only do you have your tax-deferred dollars, not only do you have your tax-free dollars, but then you also have your taxable or after-tax dollars that you can begin building. So I think that's a great place to think about parking that extra $10,000 you have to get to the 25%. Now, once you hit your 25%, now I think, because we've answered a lot of this question, and we haven't really talked a whole lot about debt
the
yet,
debt
right?
Because she's got 2 debts. She's got student loans at 6%. That's $200,000, and then got a mortgage at 7.5%. Now, look, historically, 7.5% is high, and there's probably a big itch to pay it off. But I got to tell you, at your level of income, you are likely itemizing on that. So it is going to be a net of tax interest rate, meaning you take your tax rate, put it by the 7.5%.
You're paying effectively a little less than that.
You're paying effectively a little bit lower than that. But here's the thing. I think that this is a moment in time. I don't know when. I'm not willing to set you a timetable on it. But I do think mortgage rates will be coming down to where you'll likely be able to refinance in the 5s. Even 6s, making that $800,000 much more digestible long term and not even qualify as really high interest rate anymore. On the student loan, that's something that's sitting out there as well. I didn't hear any information if she worked for the government, so if this qualified for any public service payoff, or forgiveness type stuff. So we don't have that data point, but I do think by the time you get to steps 8 and 9 of the financial order of operations. We're going to put a pin in 8 right now because that's really the abundance goals and really talk about the debt. Is that let's look at this as a math equation, because when I think about somebody who makes $135,000 net of your housing and taxes, because that's what it works out to be. That works out to be around $11,250 a month net that's coming through after the taxes and housing. We've already talked about that we're probably going to be doing around $5,600 in investments. That leaves the remaining $5,600 for everything else, including the debt payment. So you said something that I want to give you a compliment on, Julia, is that you said that you've really been leaning into living a lean lifestyle. So assuming, because if you got your big housing expenses, you got the investments, I'm hoping that you and your spouse can keep your living expenses below, $2,000 a month, because if you can do that, that's going to leave over $3,500.
You can do maybe something else with.
Even get it up to $4,000 a month that could actually be extinguishing that debt on an accelerated path. And then talk about, this is the beauty of the financial order of operations. Not only do you pay respect to the get wealthy behaviors, but the fact that we're also going to put you on a track, because we hate debt too. Debt is a dangerous tool, but it is something that unfortunately a lot of us still have to use. When you start at zero, even though we hate debt, we have to, because it's just as dangerous as a chainsaw. At some point, you got to fuel up the chainsaw because you got to cut some firewood. I mean, that is the reality of the situation. And Julia, you've got a great income, but that's primarily because you had to go and run up all this student loan debt, which obviously probably feels like a cloud over you. But I think that this is still going to be a positive situation that you can be very aggressive, tackle it, and really have the get wealthy behaviors of saving and investing, and then the stay wealthy behaviors of paying down the debt aggressively, even though they're not interest rates that historically we love.
So, the way the question was ended was any advice. Number one piece of advice, if you've not subscribed, you should click on subscribe right now so that we know who you are. Number two, if you want a fancy free copy of the Financial Order of Operations, you go to moneyguy.com/resource. You can download your very own free copy. And someone even said in here, hey guys, can you kind of go in depth into each of the steps? We do. We do that very thing. If you go to learn.moneyguy.com in the Financial Order of Operations course, we actually walk through each one of the steps in depth. So if that's something that might be valuable for you, Julia, I would encourage you to check it out.
And then I would be remiss if I didn't share also, go check out the pre-order for Millionaire Mission. If you go to moneyguy.com/millionaire mission, I have a book coming out next May that is going to be a deep dive, including the origin story for every step of the financial order of operations.